Here we
Day
are.
58. Yeah, we're here in day 58. This is not advice. We are going to share our answers, not tell you how to live your life. And Min and I have a doozy of a question today in our week about communications.
Yeah, this one's a interesting, fun question.
Lovely.
Will my resignation read like I was fired?
Yes.
Oh,
And maybe that's okay. I mean, like, I guess what I would say is this. There's this culture of obfuscation in many organizations where it's like, well, I remember I worked at McKinsey, and at McKinsey, where you got fired, what they said was you got counseled out, i.e. advised to leave. And to be fair, there, it's like you could sit around for months and nobody would actually kick you out unless you did something wrong. And so I think the first question really on this is, why do you care? Because many people who have been wildly successful got fired. Steve Jobs got fired. Mike Bloomberg got fired. I mean, just go down the list, again and again and again and again. Meg Whitman, I'm sure, got fired, And in a way, there is a time in your career where being fired from a certain role at a certain time can mean that you were trying to do something worth doing and just had conflict, which people have conflict. Like, it's not the end of the world. That said, I think the kind of main lens here is truth. It's like if you were fired and they wanted to give you the fig leaf of asking for your resignation, and people read it that way, it is what it is. But the legitimate version of this is like, look, it might hurt me if people thought I got fired because they might think I did something wrong, like a future employer, or, by the way, another employee at that company might think that you did something wrong, and it might distance your relationship with them. You might be asked to sign an NDA around the terms of your departure, which there are inappropriate reasons for that, like, covering up harassment. And there are appropriate reasons for that, like there is something about why you got fired that would reveal something about the strategy of the company, and the company doesn't want that revealed externally. So sometimes you end up with that fig leaf of resignation, and sometimes you really did resign. And the thing I would say about it is, knowing the way you can manage it is you can know what the norms are in the industry that you're in the company that you're in, and play to or against those norms. So, for example, if every time an executive who got fired has a press release saying that they resigned and you have the same thing, even though you really resigned, it's going to look like you got fired. And so then being able to say something in social media, which, by the way, that's an amazing tool we have now, which employees didn't have in the past. They had to negotiate the press release. Just saying, no, this is a real, actual resignation. That's okay. I think a good principle for whenever you leave an organization, and I believe this whether you are the person pushing somebody out or asking them to leave or the person being pushed out, is to allow the person who is affected to control the narrative as much as possible. And that, because it's their life, it's their story. And so I think if you're a boss letting somebody go, pay attention to that and allow the person to control the narrative. Now, that depends on something, which is it depends on trust. If I don't trust that person who is leaving, I think they might undercut me on the way out if I'm the boss, or undercut the organization, which many people do. Then, the organization's interest, if I'm the leader of the organization, has to supersede that employee's interest. But most people, most of the time, not all people all the time, but most people most of the time, are actually really responsible about this, and they just want to be known for what happened and treated with dignity. And so let them control the narrative, play against the norm. And ultimately, yes, there are, I'm going to frame the question slightly differently, which is there someone important who will read my genuine resignation as if I got fired? Yes. It's the price, and you got to pay it. I don't know. What does that bring up for you, man?
So, I mean, I think this brings up a broader topic about how the optics around how you leave a company, leave your organization. And to your point, I feel like every other day there's a long Twitter thread about, how
personal update.
Yeah. And so, I mean, to that definitely points to how people have more autonomy and more agency and how they control that narrative, how they want to manage it. But to your point, especially if you're a senior executive or somebody who held a position of authority within the company, certainly people will have questions. And I guess the thing that you can hope for is that you send an internal note around to some of the people that you care most about to make sure that you get to manage those relationships in the way that you want to.
Yeah, and I think those one-on-ones or communicating with people after, or some organizations, there's now a Slack for the alumni who left, especially if there's a layoff or something like that. And to me, the optics question, and maybe let's tackle this on a future day, is also related to entry of people. Like, one of the things I got wrong as a manager when I started managing is when you hire somebody new, how do you introduce them to the team so that their role reads correctly, it's accepted, blah, blah, blah. So we can talk about that part of onboarding, because I often find that communication on optics is tricky too. It's all tricky. That's why, we work
so we're talking about them on This Is That Advice. And so we'll be back here tomorrow. Roy and I are at Bloomberg Beta. We're learning what we hear from you about what you want to know about work. And so if this was helpful, or if this was relevant to someone please feel free to share and keep asking your questions.
Yes, thank you. Steve Pearman, who is my friend who we work together at MySpace, says he's spending more time with his family. I guess maybe his resignation read some way. Oh, that's the euphemism. I've gone to spend more time with my family, unless you actually did. Unless you actually did. When I left IGN, just to close with a personal story on this, which I had run, I resigned. And at the same time, I resigned because something I cared a lot about doing, which was doing a management buyout of the company, didn't work. So it's kind of like, yeah, I resigned, but I resigned because I failed to do something that I'd kind of put my heart and effort into, and figuring out exactly how to manage that took a trick. And one of the things I did, and I've written about this on my blog, is I changed my LinkedIn title to say doing nothing, because I was trying to make very clear that that was my intention, not just spending more time with family. And yes, Steve, this is every day. And I want to hear questions that you have for us, because you have funny questions and good answers. All right, that's all we got.
Okay. Bye. I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye. See you tomorrow.